All right, folks, the bookstore is going to be closing at 4 o'clock. So if you'd like to buy books, run in between a session, sneak out of a session, buy some books. The authors who are doing the reading at the end of the day will be able to sign books in the reading, but their session isn't over until I think 4 or 4:10. So if you're going to want any of those books to be signed, buy them before the session and bring them to the session for signing. The open mic has, last time I checked, 18 people signed up. But remember, 1 page each. It's going to go quick. So if you want to sign up for that, go ahead and do so after the afternoon keynote.
That's single space?
No. Double spaced. Okay, so half a page is single spaced. Unless it's poetry, and I do not mean prose poetry. I think those are all my announcements. So let me go ahead and introduce our afternoon keynote. I went to the 10 Oaks Gallery last Thursday night. I recognize a few of you from the bilingual poetry night reading there, featuring poet Jose Angel Araguz, who's here today and who will be reading during that last session this afternoon. And this chill lady in the back with her camera, Caroline, was also filming for the reading at 10 Oaks. And at one point, she leaned over to me and said in this nice theatrical stage whisper, "Hey, Lisa, I just read Fonda Lee's Zero Boxer, and it was amazing." She said, "It's not even YA. The protagonist is a YA, but the book is just as good as regular books, as adult books, as big people books, right?" So, which I think is a feature of YA. Is that right, Fonda? That, like, the protagonists are young, but these books are for us. In fact, I've been to readings at Powell's with my truly young adult daughters, where they were the youngest in the room. The room was full of 20-somethings and some gray hairs, like some of us. So, Fonda, you've got some fans among the non-adults here. I understand also your most recent book, which I have not read, Jade City, right, is an adult novel. And this is part of a series that she's working on. She has something new coming out next week, very soon. Perhaps she will share about it. I'm sure she will as she comes up. So Fonda writes science fiction and fantasy, if you're not familiar with her work, and this means that she invents worlds, whole worlds, not just people and families and communities, but entire structures. She creates cultures and histories for those cultures and families who live within those cultures, and I think there's some magic too. Yeah, so she makes magic also. Fonda has been a finalist for prestigious awards such as the Oregon Book Award. She is a finalist this year for her novel Exo. She's also been a finalist for the Andre Norton Award, and she's won the Oregon Spirit Book Award for Zero Boxer, that awesome book, Caroline. Fonda's books have been praised for their intense action and moral complexity. We're ready to learn from you, Fonda. Welcome, Fonda Lee. For having me here. I was at a out-of-state writing event a month ago or so, and someone was asking me, "What is with the Pacific Northwest? Why do you have so many writers here?" And maybe all the rain motivates us to stay indoors. Right. But here we are on a rare, dry, fairly sunny spring day, and we are all indoors talking about writing. So I've revised my theory. I think it's probably a contagion in the water in the air. But I've been to a lot of writing conferences, and I have sat where you're sitting now. I've listened to a lot of lunchtime keynote speakers. I don't remember the specifics of all of them all that well. But, sometimes the speaker would be like a National Book Award winner, or a New York Times bestselling author, or a veteran of the field with 30 years of experience and 30 published books. And I really enjoyed listening to those speeches. I got a lot out of hearing these really experienced, accomplished authors just encourage me to keep writing, tell me to persevere and to continue to up my craft and to find joy in my art. And they often just filled me with this sense of inspiration. Hopefully you're getting that out of the day today. This emotional boost that you need to go back and sit down at the desk, put your fingers on the keyboard, and just keep pursuing the dream. In my case, the dream of having a shelf of books to my name. I'm not sure I can do that for you today.
I don't feel like a fount of reflective wisdom. I'm not looking back on a long career. I haven't been an author for long enough. I'm too close. I'm too much in the trenches. 5 years ago, I was attending conferences like this as an unpublished author. I hadn't yet finished the manuscript that would become my debut novel. It came out April 7th, 2015, so I just passed my 3rd year author anniversary. It feels a lot longer than that, a lot. But it's also passed in the blink of an eye. My 4th novel comes out next month. My 5th and 6th are on contract. I have a 200,000 word manuscript that's due in the fall. Sometime before then, I have to go to 3 award ceremonies, 4 writing festivals, 2 conventions, and a school visit. So if most author keynote speeches are kind of like the equivalent of a 5-star general who kind of comes in and has really profound things to say about military strategy and global politics, I'm like the sergeant who's covered in mud, who's like running from explosions and just barking incoherently into the video. But that's where I hope I can give you a bit of perspective that is grounded entirely in the realities of being a working professional author. For some of you, this will hopefully prove very helpful. And for the rest of you, I just hope you're entertained. So consider it lessons learned in the first 5 years of a writing career, or a random list of things I now know. Only I didn't want to be completely random, so I organized them into some big themes. Becoming a writer. I came from a prior career in corporate America, doing strategic planning at Fortune 500 companies. When I transitioned to life as an author, I discovered that almost everything that I knew about how to succeed in corporate America was not only useless, but actively detrimental to adjusting to a creative career. I'd spent my life up until that time with this model for how to succeed. You get a good education, good grades, you do well on tests, and that commands, a better salary when you start work at a stable job in a company. And you do well at your assigned responsibilities. Hopefully in a few years, you can expect a raise and a promotion. At that point, you get new business cards, and they tell you exactly where you are in that corporate pecking order. And every year, you receive an annual review, and that tells you how you're doing relative to all your peers in the field, and what you can do to advance. Writing is the opposite of that in pretty much every way. Right? Starting with the fact that no one will tell you when you have even begun your job. You don't go to sleep one night and wake up the next morning as a writer. In fact, there is no magic time when you feel like a real writer. Which means that you play some really interesting mind games with yourself. Right? Once I finish this manuscript, I will be a real writer. Once I get an agent, I will be a real writer. Once I get a book deal, once I'm published, once I prove that the first time wasn't just a random fluke, I managed to write another book. Becoming a writer is all in your head. No one gives you the job title. It's something you have to claim for yourself. And this might happen to you all at once as a sudden epiphany, or it might take you years. It might happen before you're published, it might happen on the day you are published, it might not happen until long after you're published. In any case, when it does happen, it's a little scary, but it's not as scary as when you start admitting it in public. And at some point a few years ago, I don't even know exactly when, but when people at parties asked me what I did for a living, I stopped hiding and hedging behind the, I used to work in consulting and started saying, I'm a writer. When that happens to you, print up some business cards. There is no career path in writing. Every path is different. There's no way to compare your path to that of anyone else. I have seen writers that failed to sell their first 5 manuscripts, sell their 6th book in an auction, and debut on the New York Times bestseller list. I've seen established authors have their series canceled and be unable to sell their next book. Selling a project is no guarantee that you will sell the next. And likewise, rejection and failure are no indication of the future. They are just part of the journey. So trying to compare your progress to that of anyone else, that way lies madness. So much of what we do is done in solitude, and you have no way of knowing what it took each author to get to where they are now. So for someone like me, who was used to benchmarks and grades and competition, that was a really hard adjustment, but it was an absolutely necessary one. There is a lot of room for stories in this world, so keep your eyes on your own paper. Be honest with yourself about your goals. The dream of becoming a full-time novelist for a Big 5 publishing house in New York is not for everyone. So ask yourself why you're writing. You want to see your books in libraries and schools? Do you have an important story that you feel needs to be shared with the world? Do you want to create something that you can give to your family? Do you have some specific expertise that you think could help a particular group of people? Do you just want to write fan fiction for the sheer fun of it and not worry about being published? There are countless valid reasons to write, and a few valid ones to be published. Here's a good way to decide if you want to be a professional writer. If you think you can be happy not doing it, don't. If you have to write, well then, sorry, but know that it can be done. But don't follow anyone else's path. Stay focused on your own goals. Don't self-publish if what you really want is a traditional book deal. Don't go after a traditional book deal if what you really want to do is self-publish. Don't confine yourself to one business model or the other. If it doesn't suit you, don't write in a genre or a category that you don't want to just because you think it's more marketable. Don't write because someone says you should. Don't ever stop writing because someone says you should. Few words about perseverance and luck. So perseverance, perseverance, perseverance. Whenever I go to writing conferences, it's probably the one thing that is most commonly cited as being a key ingredient to success as a writer. And that's for good reason, because it's mostly true. But I've also noticed that maybe we're not being clear enough about how to persevere. I've seen writers who supposedly persevere by revising the same unwanted manuscript for 10 years, or by writing sequel after sequel to a book that hasn't sold yet, or spending thousands of dollars going to conferences and workshops without ever actually sitting down to finish their project. Perseverance isn't about banging your head on a brick wall. It's not about repeating things that don't work. It's about keeping your eyes on the destination while making course corrections along the way. It means staying focused on your work while paying attention to the market. Right? Imagine a Venn diagram where one circle is what you want to write, and another circle is what people want to read. Aim unerringly at that overlap, and then do it over and over and over again. And finish your project and send it out. And if it doesn't sell, write something else and send that out. You can't send it out if it's not finished, so finish your projects. Practice finishing as much as you practice starting. Think of success in the field of writing as a three-legged stool consisting of talent, perseverance, and luck. You need at least two of those legs to stand on. You can have talent and perseverance, perseverance and luck, luck and talent. No matter what way you look at it, luck is a big part of this business. And they say you can control talent and perseverance more than you can control luck. But you need to play hard to get lucky. So get out there and search for luck. Mine the fields of luck. That means talking to people, making connections, being open to opportunities. I got my first audiobook deal after making a connection with another author that I paneled with at WorldCon. I ended up selling a piece of fiction to an anthology editor that I met at a business meeting for the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. My latest 3-book deal came about because of a tweet. I finished a novel that I had been working on for 3 years. I sent it to my agent after multiple revisions on December 21st of 2000. On December 22nd, An editor at Orbit, which is a division of Hachette, sent out a tweet and hashtagged it MSWL, which for those of you who are not familiar with that term, stands for manuscript wish list. It's a way for editors and agents in the business to shout out what kind of stories they're looking for. And Sarah Guan at Orbit sent out a tweet that said, "Give me a Game of Thrones style book set in like a 1930s Asia with gang families and magic." Now, I didn't have a book set in the 1930s, but everything else was frighteningly accurate to the project that I had just spent 3 of my years working on. I did not see this tweet. One of my friends, who is my critique partner, saw it, sent it to me, and said, "Have you seen this?" I sent it to my editor, my agent. And the next day, all the offices shut down for the holidays. In the first week of January, we finished reading my manuscript, said it was ready. We sent it out on submission. The first place we sent it was to Sarah Guan at Orbit, and 3 weeks later, I had a 3-book deal. That one still kind of blows my mind. But none of those bits of luck would have happened if I hadn't had work ready to shove into the luck pool. So think of luck as a roaming magic hippopotamus that is teleporting back from writer to writer, jaws agape, and you have to be ready to shove your best work into the maw when it comes around to you for that brief moment before it flits away again. The work. When I worked at McMinnville, we had a series of maxims, which were like the philosophical guiding posts of the company. And one of them was, product is king. Without product, you have nothing. Advertising, marketing, distribution, finance, sales, all of it exists to support the product. I don't think so. For us as writers, story is the product. Story is king. At the end of the day, nothing that we do matters unless we have a good story to tell. Your best stories are going to be the ones that you are best suited to write. Whatever your combination of experiences, expertise, and passions, put that on the page. My debut novel was not the first book that I wrote. I had another manuscript that I was already querying. But Zero Boxer became my debut because it was a novel that only I could write. It was formed out of my love of science fiction, my decade plus of martial arts training, and years of experience working at Nike in the sports marketing field on some of the biggest sports marketing campaigns. So it seems very strange to say that the book of my heart was a science fiction thriller about a futuristic prizefighter competing in zero gravity, but there you have it. Tap into whatever that is for you. Take your job, your hobbies, your family dynamics, your favorite foods or songs, whatever it is, infuse it into your work. These days, for better or worse, you're not just selling your writing. You are selling yourself as the creator. Agents, publicists, interviewers, and readers want to know how you are authentically connected to your work. I mentioned that I have a background in business. Well, there is a scene in my latest novel, Jade City, where one of my main characters finds out that something is very amiss after she's examined some financial records. The book came out in November. I have since had no less than 3 people approach me at signing events or tagging on the internet, saying things like, "I just want to say that I'm an accountant, and I really loved that scene where Shay uses her auditing skills." That is not something that I anticipated. If no one hates your work, it hasn't found a wide enough audience yet. It's impossible for a piece of writing to work for all readers. Right? You know this intuitively. We've all had that experience where you read a book or you watch a movie or consume some other form of art that everyone else seems to love, and you're like, I don't get it. Conversely, right, we have had that experience where you read a book or see something that you that is utter perfection, that should be a best-selling, prize-winning masterpiece. And no one's talking about it, right? What? I have either unwisely or unwittingly read enough of my own reviews to know that the same book will be unput-downable to some readers and boring as drawing paint for others. This isn't to say that quality is entirely subjective. Agents, editors, writers, and some readers will recognize and appreciate good writing and good storytelling. But you can't please everyone, and you should not try. You don't have an obligation to write likable characters or happy stories or so-called important topics. What you do have is an obligation to write the truth, your truth, to the best of your ability, to respect yourself as an artist, and to respect the time that your readers are giving you by putting your best work forward. There is no one way to go about this. Anyone who tells you that there's one way to write is lying. Disabuse yourself of the notion that there is a perfect process. Plotting versus pantsing, or more generously, outlining versus discovery writing. Fast first drafting versus slow and steady. Writing every day or writing in spurts. Writing in the morning, writing at night, writing on multiple projects versus focusing on one. Using Scrivener or Word or longhand. You will find that successful writers run the gamut across the full spectrum of writing habits, methods, and processes. We are all like the bakers in Great British Bake Off. Compare recipes, kitchen gadgets, proofing methods. Really, all that matters at the end is the cake done and does it taste good? So write in the manner that works for you, that leads you to a finished product that you can be proud of. You may have to try a lot of different things to find out what works for you, with the hitch that it works for you for now. Because here's the thing, every project is different. What worked for one book may not work for the next. I am in the thick of writing what will be my 5th published book, and I have no idea what I am doing. In fact, it's nothing like any of the books that came before it. I am so mired, I'm currently writing it backwards. There's a long story that we will not go into, but whatever, let's try it. Right? I'm desperate. That is both the endless joy and the weirdly joyful challenge, endless frustration, endless joy, endless frustration and weird joy of being an author. You only ever learn to write the book that you have written. Every time you open a new file and stare at that blank page, it's like starting fresh. But what keeps the terror at bay is the knowledge that you have done it before. One of the great mysteries that I have yet to resolve about writing is why it never gets any easier. I mean, you would think that most things you do get better. It does get easier. But the second book is not easier than the first. If anything, it's harder, and I know it's not just me, because I've had this conversation with many, many authors, and this is a common experience. And it's possibly because you now have something to compare your work to. And for a while, it will feel like everything you write falls short of what you have already written. You will be convinced that your best work is behind you, even if that best work consists of a single published story. A sole fluke that is the summation of all that your potential will ever amount to. I wrote and rewrote my second book and gnashed my teeth through the entire process. But now I look back, and it seems like a walk in the park. I mean, the 5th book, now that's a real bitch. But, you know, it's like childbirth. You forget how painful it was, otherwise you would never do it again. But without every book that I write, without fail, there is a period where I think, I can't do this, this is impossible. I don't know who wrote those other books, it wasn't me. And this is normal. Recently, I was bemoaning to a far more experienced author friend of mine that I thought I was actually getting, instead of getting faster and better, I was actually getting slower and worse. And at which point she said, that is perfectly normal, it just means your standards are rising. I was trying to transition out of my business career and into being an author. I did do exactly what I just told you not to do, which is I quit my day job. But it was so I could contract myself back as a part-time worker and get more flexibility and fewer hours. And that worked out well, because what I could do was pick up consulting for a few months and work on a project and sock away enough money to fund my writing for the rest of the year. So after more than a year of slaving away at my manuscript, which was not my first manuscript, by the way, I managed to sell my book for the whopping sum of $5,000, or roughly what I would make after less than 2 weeks of part-time corporate work, at which point I did another gig so I could sink more time into writing my second manuscript and promoting marketing and traveling for my debut. See, the thing about writing is if you decide to pursue it as a profession, there will come a time when it is basically a full-time job that makes no money. When you do make money, it will be unpredictable and late. It will show up in untimely chunks that make it impossible for you to plan your life. And yet, oddly enough, upon your first book deal, there will be a not insignificant number of people who believe that you must be rich, and they will say things like, "Guess the drinks are on you tonight," and "So when's the movie coming out?" Relying on writing to keep a roof over your head and food on your table is not a good place to be, at least not until you're well established and are generating enough income to weather the inevitable instability. It's a good idea to have a way to pay the bills that still affords you the time to write, because financial stress is, as a general rule, not conducive to good writing. In fact, possibly the worst thing that you can do to your creativity is to burden it with the expectation that it will feed you. If you do want to become a full-time writer, plan carefully for the transition. Get your financial house in order, have savings, have an exit strategy. But remember that a lot of writers do not write full-time and can still have perfectly viable careers. And finances aren't the only consideration. I know more than a few authors who quit their day jobs, went full-time, and decided after a period that they were happier having a day job or part-time work to break up their day and take the pressure off their writing, and that it actually made them happier and more productive writers. Since it is April 14th, I would be remiss to not mention taxes. As soon as you start making money from writing, put a third to a half of it away. When you get your first real check, you may be wildly excited. Depending on whether you sold a trilogy at auction or a short story at token rates, you may decide to celebrate by buying a car or going to Starbucks and getting a latte. That would be a bad idea. I mean, you can get the latte. But what you need to do is take 40% and sock it away for taxes. Otherwise, you will end up doing what my husband and I did a couple of nights ago, which was hyperventilate and regret all of your life choices and your full-time. Support. In the acknowledgments of my first book, I wrote, "A fighter gets into the ring alone, but it takes many people to get him or her to that moment, and an entire team is working just behind the ropes. So it is with authors. The myth of the solitary writer, the reclusive Salinger type, genius, the tortured, hard-drinking artist, is for the most part exactly that, a myth. You can't survive, much less succeed, in this business without an enormous amount of support along the way. When I left my day job to become a writer, I worried about being lonely. I am a fairly extroverted person as far as writers go. I spent my career working on teams, speaking and meeting with people all day, and I wondered if I would really miss that social aspect. I needn't have worried. I do not at all. Even on my worst writing days, I am not tempted to go back to my day job. And I think that is because I feel like I have more social connection and more of a sense of community, more friends than I ever did working in a company of thousands of people. I urge you to find your writing community, to build those friendships with fellow authors, because it will sustain you. There will be days when the only one who can understand what you are going through is a fellow writer who has been through it too. And at every stage of my career so far, I have been fortunate to be able to look to more experienced writers for advice or encouragement or inspiration. 5 or 6 years ago, when I was getting serious about writing for publication, I attended Woodstock, and I took a bunch of free writing workshops. And I noticed that there was this other woman in the same room as me. We were always in the same workshops throughout the day. So at the last session, we happened to be sitting next to each other, and I struck up a conversation with her. And it turned out we were writing projects. We were both writing YA fantasy projects. We ended up getting our books published in the same year, traveling to conventions together. She's still one of my first readers. That same day at Woodstock, I took a workshop from April Henry, who did not have to give me the time of day, but sat down to have coffee with me and talked me through advice for querying. Another of my friends, current beta readers, I met at Willamette Writers, years before either of us was published. So while you're here today, remember that this is a chance to make those invaluable connections. Right? You are not in competition with other writers. A book or a story or an article is not like a car. People do not buy it and then go, well, I'm good for 10 years. We are all in it together, trying to lift the tide. We are in competition against everything out there that is not reading. So support your fellow authors. Be part of the community. Contribute to the community, and the community will give back to you. People get stressed about networking. There's this worry that you have to know someone in order to make it. But first of all, it's not true. I got my agent off of a cold query. You don't need to have friends in high places in New York to be published. But second of all, networking is really simple. Right? There's one secret to it, and that is make friends with no ulterior motive. That's it. Over time, those friends form a net that you can stand on. There are so many writers, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, like I mentioned, and yet it is a surprisingly small world. I was looking at the instructor list today and was like, hey, Laura's Nora, see? Just saw you in Tucson like a couple weeks ago. And Debbie was just at MLC Comic-Con a few weeks ago. And it's great, because we are all doing our own work, but we are also all connected and part of this community. And what we do is difficult and unique, and we need to support each other. Find critique partners, but make sure that the people and the process that you have in place are actually helpful. If bi-weekly meetings don't work for you, well, then don't do them. If you prefer working with a few trusted beta readers, do that instead. Critique groups are a time-consuming commitment, and if you regularly come out of a critique group, you feel great because your group is so supportive and they say such nice things about your work and everyone loves it. That is not helpful. If you regularly come out of your critique groups feeling terrible because all your writing is garbage and no one has anything nice to say about it, that is also not helpful or useful. Some of the responsibility for that falls on you, because receiving and using critical feedback is a vital lifetime skill if you want to be a writer. When I run writing workshops, I sometimes see two types of beginning writers. Those that take deeply to heart every piece of criticism, and those that dismiss every piece of criticism. And both of them are equally deluded about their own skills and are unlikely to improve. There is no point at which you ever stop getting feedback from your agent, from your editor, from your readers. But what does happen is that you will know yourself better, and you will get better about knowing what feedback to take and what to discard. No book makes it to market on its own. If you're self-published, you will have to hire the right people, editors, cover designers, and those would be extremely important decisions. If you're traditionally published, a whole team of people will shepherd your book to market. You will be astounded by how many people touch your book before it hits the shelf. Be nice to those people. You'll stand up for your work when you need to, but remember that in an ideal situation, you and your publishing team are working together. And we're all on the same side. They are working with you because they are invested in your book's success. That is why it is so important to have the right agent and the right editor for your work. Don't sign with a bad agent or take a bad book deal because you're desperate. It will only ever lead to heartache. Believe in yourself, believe in your work. If you have to change your agent or your publisher, know that you are far from being the first author who has had to go through it. And most of all, you will need the understanding and patience of your loved ones. Writers live lives of quiet anxiety and constant self-doubt. And oftentimes, we simply can't do the job unless there's a support system at home. If you are the spouse or the partner of a writer, know that you have an utterly thankless but invaluable job. I would not be here as an author speaking to you today if my husband had not said, sure, we're going to give up most of your day job income, and I'm going to pick up the kids after school and be okay with you traveling for events, and also griping to me every evening about your latest plot problem. He is in the acknowledgement of all of my books, although there is no way that I can ever thank him properly. So I hope for all of you that you have that support, that you need to pursue this thing that you love. And if you don't, you need to have some serious conversations and to find that in your life. Perspective on being published. Being published changes everything, and also at first nothing. For many people, being published is a lifelong dream. It's the culmination of years of hard work and striving. You are likely to invest an enormous amount of emotional significance into your debut, and there is a good chance it will not live up to your expectations. You'll be thrown a whole new set of insecurities, demands, stress, things that are beyond your control. When my first book was coming out, I joined a dating group of fellow YA and middle grade authors. And in that group, we had people whose publishers went under, whose editors left, whose books were canceled, who struggled with agent or publisher issues, or who dealt with major life crises all while trying to launch their book. Your debut is important, but remember that it is not your one shot. It is not the be-all and end-all of your writing career, not if you have more words in you. The day you wake up after your book comes out, you will do this. You will spend the morning answering congratulatory emails and messages. Then you will go to the bookstore and you will see your book on the shelf. And if you are so inclined, hopefully you will have a party and maybe a launch event and sign some books, and it will all be very fun and exciting. And the next morning you will wake up feeling pretty much the same. No one will have read your book yet. You still have to make breakfast, feed the kids and the dog, go to your day job, or sit back down at your computer. And even though you are now officially a published author, you will realize that the more profound change happened probably some time ago. That period when I told you about, when you decided what your job was and introduced yourself as, I'm a writer. It's hard not to get drowned in noise. Social media is pervasive, it's addictive. And the nuts and bolts, fingers on the keyboard, button the chair act of writing is hard. It's harder than checking Twitter and obsessing about how many followers you have. It is harder than polishing that query letter for the umpteenth time. It's harder than signing up to go to another workshop. It's harder than doing a graduate degree. Harder than your day job. It's harder than just about anything else you could do with your time. If you love writing, even if it's what you want to do with your life and you can't imagine not writing, it is still hard. And there are days, many days, when it's tempting to think that you are advancing your career by doing all the subsidiary things around writing. Social media, events, updating your website, doing your author headshot, which all needs to be done, by the way, but are not writing, and so is not the engine that makes the train go. In closing, what I know about being a writer. Writing career is an ongoing series of private failures, punctuated by occasional moments of moderate public success. It's not a job that you can leave at the office. It will permeate your every waking moment, and you will find it impossible to ever enjoy yourself for any length of time without the nagging guilty sensation that you ought to be writing. If writing is important enough to you, you will find a way to do it. You will write during your lunch hour. You'll write on the train, on planes, while your children nap, while you're in the car, as your kids are at swim practice, at night when everyone's asleep, in the morning when no one's awake yet. You might be at your friend's wedding, your child's music recital, visiting your dying grandmother, and you will be thinking about your book. You will finish every day feeling as if you didn't accomplish enough. You will feel as if everyone is better at this than you. You will wonder why it seems so much harder for you than for all those other authors, those smarter, more efficient, more talented authors. You will make ambitious lists of the things that you're going to do once you finish this manuscript or hit that deadline. These things will include clean the house, watch television, sleep for 3 days, buy new shoes, and phone your mother. You will be rejected rejected and rejected. And even after you are published and supposedly successful, you will be rejected some more. Things will go wrong. You'll have bad covers, unresponsive publicists, editors that leave, publishers that fold, deals that fall through, agents that don't work out. You'll regret taking a deal that you shouldn't have. You will regret not taking a deal that you should have. You will have victories. Editors will love and buy your work. You will see your work praised on the internet. You will get appreciative letters from readers. You'll be buzzed about and interviewed. You'll be nominated for awards. You might win awards. You might be a bestseller. You'll celebrate those victories. But the joy and attention that come from them will fade quickly, and the market will move on. Dozens of new books will be out the week after your book comes out. You'll walk into a bookstore and find your book on the shelf and be filled with a sense of pride, and then you will wander the 5 floors of Powell's and feel like an extremely insignificant speck in the ocean of books, more books than anyone could read in 10 lifetimes. And you will go back to your desk, and you will write some more. And you'll stop once in a while to reflect on the fact that what you do is magic. Flat out magic. You'll sit at a keyboard and string words together, and they go out into the world, and people read them, and for a few hours they are transported from their day-to-day lives out of their reality and into a shared space of your creation. There they are entertained, provoked, informed, and moved to tears of joy or anger or hope or sorrow. They fall in love with the world you've described, with the characters they meet, with the ideas that you give them, with the stories that you tell. They will write you fan mail or tag you on Twitter, or best of all, tell their friends about this amazing thing that they read and that their friends should read too. And in that moment, even if you are never aware of it, you are powerful in a very special way. And every step that you took to get there will have been worth it. Thank you very much for having